Hello, everyone. I hope you're all safe and doing well in your bubbles. My name's Joey. I'm a year 10 student at Manurewa High. I'm Chinese, and the options I'm taking this year are commerce and art. I'd like to start us off with our opening karakia. Wakataka te hau ki te uru, wakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, e hia ki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ti he modiota. And I'd like to welcome Chris.
Thanks so much, Joey. Kia ora koutou, ko Chris Woods aho, and I'm really delighted to be here again for another of our Future of Work inspirational talks. And the theme for this series of talks is the future of food, and really looking forward to the kōrero this evening. So, as we have done with other sessions, what we'll do is we'll look forward to our presentation in a moment, and Emma will introduce that in a little bit more detail. And at the end of that, we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. So in order to do that, we'd love you to post your questions in the comments section. And as we have done before, what we'd like you to do is this evening or to please put in what your relationship is with Manarewa High School. Are you a teacher there, a student, maybe a past student, a whānau, family member? So if you could put that in. And then the other thing that we'd really like to know is we're coming into the holiday season. And I just read somewhere that between the 1st of November and the 15th of January, there are 29 different holidays celebrated worldwide from different religions. So, coming into the holiday season, what is your favorite food that you have as part of celebrating a particular holiday? So, what's your favorite food that you absolutely enjoy to celebrate the particular holiday? So, really look forward to your questions. Going to be another great session, and I'll hand over to Emma now to talk a little bit more about our guest speaker. Kia ora, Emma.
Kia ora. The future food is values-driven, people-centric, and future-focused. So what does that mean for young people and rangatahi when thinking about their next steps through school and beyond? We can never be sure, but here are a few ideas. Embrace opportunities to be part of collectives and collaborations. Embrace science, tech, engineering, math subjects, as this is what the industry needs. Integrate your culture and values into your future plans. It's a pivotal time for Aotearoa, and the food industry needs you. Tonight, we will hear about these ideas from our guests, Puoho Katene. He is a graduate of Stanford Business School and Fulbright Scholar. He is steadfast in his pursuit of holistic prosperity for Māori. He will share his insights from a background in marine science, business, and leadership. His role as an Obama Foundation leader, Asia Pacific, has given him a global outlook on leveraging global best practice with an indigenous values-based lens. We're extremely privileged to have Te Puoho with us tonight, and I'm so excited to hear what he has to say.
Kia ora. He te pēha koutou.
Kia ora.
I te tuatahi me huri taku mihi ki a rātou mā kua whaturangi tia. Rātou ngā tini mate ki a rātou. Tātou e taunei ki a tātou. First, we pass our regards to those who have passed into the world of spirits. We bid them farewell, and then we return to the land of the living. Ti he mauri ora, behold the breath of life. Taku mihi tuarua ki ngā mana whenua o Manurewa. Ara ko te akitai, Waiohua, ko Ngāti Te Ata, ko ngā tatamaho, ko Waikato Tainui, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. I pass my regards on to the people of the land, the iwi and the hapu, who have lived in this area for generations. And it is appropriate for us to pay homage to those who have gone before and for those who are coming and following in our footsteps in the height of respect as we can. And for me, that is in my ancestral language given to me by my tupuna. So under the mana of all of these, I bid you all a good evening and hello, and I'm very excited to be here for this conversation. I have a small presentation to share with us today to speak to the kaupapa that has been introduced, and it's once again my privilege to have a moment of your time tonight. Can we please bring up the presentation? Thank you. Tuatahi, ko wai tēnei, who is this speaking in front of you? Ko whitireia te maunga, my mountain is whitireia. Ko ngātai parirua te moana, my ocean is parirua. Ko kapiti te mautere, ko tōrangatira te whare, ko tōrangatira te tupuna, ko ngāti toa te iwi, ko te rauparaha te tangata. Whitireia is my mountain, Purirua is my harbour, Ngāti Toa is my iwi, and Te Rauparaha is our chief. And my name is Te Puoho. Please feel free to call me TP. I am really, it's a exercise in frustration, these conversations, because you hear these wonderful introductions that are given to you. And I'm sure, not unlike a few people in the audience, I am very aware of the saying, the kumara doesn't speak of its own sweetness. But I am also very aware that our rangatahi cannot be what they cannot see. And so it is with some reticence, but also with some hope that through doing so we might inspire, that I share some of my journey tonight. As mentioned, as a Fulbright scholar, I graduated from Stanford Graduate School of Business in 2017. On the right is one of my lecturers, that's Eric Schmidt, who was formerly the executive chairman for Google. And on the left-hand side of the screen, I was extremely privileged to be part of the inaugural cohort of Obama Foundation leaders for the Asia-Pacific region, and was lucky enough to go to Kuala Lumpur and meet President Obama and 200 other emerging leaders from around the Asia-Pacific region. And I share these with you not to be boastful in any way. The purpose of this is to show you how a young brown boy from small town Takapua here, Purirua, was able to, through no small amount of luck and with a gargantuan effort of tautoko and support from my whānau and friends, to follow my dreams and my purpose to reach heights that I didn't think were possible. And if through doing so, I can help inspire some of you to take the same steps, that would be absolutely amazing for me, and that would be enough. But one thing I did want to point out about Stanford, it is very true that Stanford attracts some of the greatest minds that I've ever been around. And the thing that attracted me about Stanford was their motto: change lives, change organizations, change the world. And whilst I knew that the people I was with were exceedingly smart and accomplished, they were no more smart than the people I grew up with, I went to school with, people here in Aotearoa. Their main difference is belief. They really believe over there that they can change the world. And despite this humble approach to life that we are born with in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the more time you spend with people, these accomplished, brilliant people who believe that not only they can change the world, but you can change the world, eventually you start to believe it yourself. So I left that place with greater education, but also that belief and that purpose instilled in me that I want to change the world for Māori. Not one Māori, not one community, all Māori. And that's what drives me forward. So in my day job, I'm the executive director for a Māori philanthropic trust. We invest in leadership and research and education outcomes for Māori around the country. But I'm here tonight more speaking about some of my other roles. I'm also on the board for, or one of the boards for Wakatu Incorporation. Wakatu is a whānau organization based at the top of the South Island, and we manage $350 million worth of assets, primarily in primary industries, on behalf of our 4,000 whānau members. And then one of the other roles that is useful for tonight is as a founding member of the Future Foods Aotearoa movement, which is a collective of food and food tech founders who are looking to accelerate and enable and enhance the growth of an ecosystem that encourages New Zealand food and food tech founders to take their world-leading products to the world and to the world markets. So when we talk about the future of food, from my perspective, it comes down to these three different kaupapa that were spoken to earlier. The first being values-driven, the second being future-focused, and the third being people-centric. That's where I see the future of food. Now, I just want to, when we talk about values-driven, I just want to talk about one quick tale that I have. About 10 years ago, I was working for a large multinational seafood company in Japan. And I was a marine biologist back then. I was working on their aquaculture research facility. And the boss had decided to take me out fishing with a group of the staff. And sure enough, I was lucky to be the first person to pull a fish out of the water. And it was a shimaji, or a trevally, we call it in New Zealand. Great eating fish, fantastic for sashimi. And being the first fish of the day, all of the people in the boat were all excited and giving me congratulations. And I leant over to my boss and I said, "Can you please put the fish back?" And he thought it was a translation issue at first. He goes, "Oh, this guy's Japanese isn't good yet." And so I had to repeat it. "Can you please put the fish back and release it into the water?" And he asked me, why would you give up such a nice, beautiful, well-eating fish? And my answer then was the same as my answer now. The first fish is for tangaroa. Now, the heart and soul of the story is this idea that our existence in our food ecosystems is not extractive by nature. It is reciprocal by nature. Our success, our prosperity as humankind isn't our ability to extract value from the natural resources that are around us. It's not enough to merely take, whether from the environment or from people. We also have to give. We need to measure our prosperity in what we give to the ocean, what we give to the freshwater, what we give to the land. Our relationship with tangaroa as the sea, our relationship with papatuanuku as the whenua, that is a measure of our prosperity, not merely a financial one. And so when we talk about the future of food, it is moving from an extractive approach to one of reciprocity, what we call taututu. If I take something from an environment, if I receive something from another person, I have an obligation to return something to that person or to that environment. And so when we think about the future, what is the first fish for tangaroa in our part of the sector, in our business, in our community? A way that we ask this in Wakatu is we talk about this. We talk about, are we being good ancestors? Now, this is a really important concept for us. We believe whakapapa is all, our genealogy, the legacy that we've inherited from our ancestors who went before us, and the legacy that we are able to protect and enhance for the future generations to follow. We need to constantly ask ourselves on a day-to-day basis, are we being good ancestors for the generations to come? And at Wakatu, we have a 500-year business plan. And it is reflecting exactly that, is that I need to make mokopuna decisions, grandchild decisions on a daily basis. Culturally, I need to value $1 I earn for my grandchildren over $1 I earn for myself. And if I'm being true in saying that I am being a good ancestors, the values that were instilled in me from my tupuna will manifest themselves in future generations. How does this manifest in what we do in the current sector? It's knowing what our effects are on the surrounding ecosystem, on the surrounding environments, on the surrounding communities. And look, these are some very large export businesses for Aotearoa, but it's important to understand what they mean and what we need to, when we go back to this idea of reciprocity, if we are being extractive in our practices, the more extractive we are, the more we are obligated to give. So talking about what the carbon footprint is, if you buy a kilogram of steak from the store, that's 30 kilograms of carbon that's produced to make that 1 kilogram. So that obligation on us as kaitiaki, as guardians of the environment, is increased. And it's not to say we can never eat steak again, but what it does mean is that we need to be aware of how sharp that obligation is for us, and that we need to live that obligation in order to be better ancestors for tomorrow. Now, the next step is to be future focused. Now, I'm sure we've all seen all of these amazing opportunities and trends and changes coming into the food and food tech sector at the moment. These are just a few of the ones that are really coming to the forefront. There's been a real focus on functional foods and nutrition and wellness that's come to the forefront as people start caring more and more about well-being and balance. The way that people are accessing food, Uber Eats, meals on demand, even to things such as HelloFresh or direct delivery to customers, the way that people are engaging with the food sector has changed dramatically in the last 2 to 5 years, and it'll continue to change dramatically. And so our ability to not only adapt to those trends, but also forecast what some of those trends are, and most importantly, what skills are needed for us to make the most of those trends, is going to be an ongoing journey and discovery. So what does it mean for the skills that we need? It is very true that these will be grounded very strongly in STEM, in our STEM subjects. And more we're seeing the hard skills coming through: engineering, data science, artificial intelligence, R&D. These are all really vital parts of creating this new food ecosystem and this new food sector opportunity into the future. But more and more we see that the things you can't automate, that you can't recreate through machine learning, are the things that deal with people. And so the emotional intelligence that we have, and that I think is one of our strengths as New Zealanders, the ability to connect with one another as employees, as staff, as communities, and with our customers, and put a real human-centered face on how we're applying these hard skills, is inimitable. We can't replace that into the future, and there's going to be a real calling card. We don't know what the future is going to bring. We know it's likely to be written in code, but most importantly, we know it's going to be about people. And that is the part that matters. Just to highlight a few of the companies that we've dealt with and that are taking this future-focused approach. Arepa is a good example of, they've created a nootropic brain drink, essentially. You'll see the gentleman in there with his brain scanning apparatus on. So Arepa in Te Reo means alpha. And the increase in alpha waves that are generated through drinking the drink has been the subject of a lot of R&D. And it's really important that we're focusing on the ability to say we can use science to prove that this is effective in use. And one of the Arepa founders is Māori, and it's great for us to be able to connect with Te Reo and take that onto an international stage too. Agrisea is another one I'll touch on quickly. Agrisea is a family organization based in the Bay of Plenty, and they are looking at harnessing the nutritional properties of seaweed. We are an ocean nation here in Aotearoa. The bounties of the sea have long sustained us, and so it is only right that we look to the sea and look to Tangaroa to continue our journey into wellness. And so the research that's going into looking at what the nutraceutical properties are of our surrounding seaweeds, and then how can we take that in a sustainable fashion, is something that really underpins their whānau organization. And the third quick company was Kanapu Hemp. Now, this gentleman is Isaac Beach. He's actually a church pastor in Hawke's Bay, but his whakapapa goes back to Manutuke in Gisborne, which is an important fact. His company grows hemp for the purposes of creating hemp milk, hemp oil. It's bringing a new cultivar and a new species into the primary industries. And the other thing that's really fascinating about that one is that they're looking to partner with collective land blocks in order to create a supply chain. So they don't want to own everything. they want to involve the community in their success. So it's a novel approach in terms of new species. They're applying new applications that meet new consumer needs, such as plant-based or alternative milk products. And then they're bringing people along the ride with them. And so thirdly, it is about being people-centered. And I'll just pass.
E rongo, e ai, tēnā whapito praukratu, e tū nei te koe, kei whātu pou e tūana, ei anei, tū whakamoa kia tina, tēnā, haumi hui, ai ki e.
Kia ora te whānau o Wakatū, he uria hau no Ngāti Tama ki te tauihu, ko au te kaihauturu o Wakatū, ko Corinza Johnston, tōku ingoa. Kia ora, my name's Corinza Johnston, I'm the CEO of Wakatū. This piece of land that we're standing on is the piece of whenua that we've dedicated to what we're calling our karioi, or our Indigenous Crops program. One of the big programs of work that the Wakatū board approved last year is called our Whenua Order program. So that's a 20-year plan to transition all of our conventional growing methods on our land. So whether it's our vineyards or our apple orchards, kiwi fruit orchards, from conventional growing to what we're calling at the moment tikanga-led regenerative. We know at its heart it will be about protecting and restoring the mauri of the whenua and the water. So by the mauri I mean the health and the well-being of the land, and we know that by doing that, that will be reflected in our people. This project and the work that we're doing on the Mara, and also all the different wānanga that we've been running, will be really key because it's helping us work out what tikanga-led regenerative means for us as the family. Once we've developed that work, we'll use it to help the different businesses transition. So whether it's our wine growing business or whether it's our apples or our hops, we will use that as the template to help the managers in the different parts transition into this new model.
One of our biggest challenges is trying to get our whānau back on the whenua to help. So part of that wānanga is just engaging with our whānau again and just trying to become a collective. I think a lot of people around the country don't have the opportunity that we have, in that we have a lot of land, and we want our whānau to feel comfortable walking on their land and working on their land and just being with their whenua again.
So distribution of the food is a fundamental aspect of what we are trying to achieve here. So a portion of the crops that we produce is retained for future cultivars of crops. A portion of it is retained for distribution to our families, and a portion of it is for sale. So we're hoping that that's kind of the holy trinity of something that's both viable and ethical in terms of growing food on the type of scale that we're talking about. This project for me is something that is really close to my heart. We're at the formative stages of something that could be incredibly transformative for our organisation. And all food production that Cornwall's involved with, transformative for our region and transformative for our families. And I don't say that lightly. This pilot is where we're kind of working out what the future might look like. So ultimately what I'd say to our whānau out here listening to this video is this project's all about you.
So karioi is the one thing that I really wanted to close with. It's very close to my heart as well. At Wakatū, we have a very wide ranging commercial business. We export to around 30 different countries. We sell around $100 million in revenue a year. But the problem is that money is like a kumara, and that it has no value outside of its ability to feed people. And so we really took this to heart. That means nothing for us if we are commercially successful, but our people aren't being sustained by the fruits of our land. And so when I was asked to come up with a name for this project, I thought of the karioi, which one of my elders had taught me. A karioi is a large multi-platform structure built out of wood that traditionally in olden times, when there were times of plenty or there was a harvest, we invited our manuhiri, our guests, to come and share that plenty with us. It was an expression of our manaakitanga, of our hospitality. It was a celebration of the balance that we were able to find with the environment on which we relied on, and also the relationships that we formed. And so looking at our project Karioi at Wakatu, it's about connecting our whānau back to their whenua. And we do that through the medium of food. And for us, thinking about this karioi, it's essentially a tripod. And tripods only work if you have three fundamental pillars that remain strong. And for us, the first of that was connection of our whānau to their whenua. The second was the ability to express our whakapapa, our genealogy, and our Māoritanga in a safe environment. And the third was that the wellness and well-being of our people was prominent in what we were doing. And if all three sides of that karioi, all three pillars of that tripod are balanced, we are able to achieve some measure of sovereignty, not just food sovereignty, but sovereignty over ourselves. So in summary, I think that no matter what we find ourselves seeing in the next generation and the next waves of innovation in the food industry, they'll be defined by these three different brackets. They'll be, well, at least our way to take advantage of those and to embrace them authentically as Aotearoa, they will have to be on these three pillars. Values driven. Are we being good ancestors? Future focused. Are we embracing the tools of the current and the next generation, the technological advancements to move with those trends? And third, that we are putting people at the heart of everything that we do. And if we're able to find balance and pursue these three kaupapa equally, then I think Aotearoa stands a really great chance of carving out a really niche and authentic place in this international food and food technology sector. But more importantly, that we can live our values and how we show manaakitanga and feed people through everything that we do. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Happy to take questions. Kia ora.
Kia ora, TP. Thank you so much. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I've been writing copious notes. I've just got so many questions going around in my head. And please, for people that are watching, fire those questions in because there's so much here to engage in. I'd like to go right back to the beginning of your kōrero when you talked about rangatahi cannot be what they cannot see. And I thought that was a beautiful way of kicking off. And I'm just interested, who were those mentors? Who were the people that, if you like, enabled you to see part of your future through what they did with you?
It was a really interesting journey that I went on. I remember going through at the time and thinking that there is this archetypal leader that people need to become in order to be effective in the environment that we're operating in. And we all know the ones. We've all seen Suits or Wall Street and things like that. And it's that full of braggadocio, that loud and aggressive persona. And it actually took the time when I went over to the United States to find out I really didn't connect with that leadership style at all. I found that the more and more I went overseas, the more I found the answers lay in my own past. And I looked back at the influence that both of my grandfathers had on me and their quiet, humble natures that were able to help move mountains through democratic processes, but were able to do so with respect and mana and make sure that everyone felt included in the conversations. It was a lot of the mentors along my professional pathway, my whānau down at Wakatu Incorporation, particularly the chair, Paul Morgan, and then our two CEOs at the time, Corinza Johnston, who we heard on the video, but also Rachel Taulele. They were amazing, and to have two strong mana wahine as our CEOs. When I went to Silicon Valley, diversity and inclusion was an absolute crisis over there. And when we talk about it, I said, all of my leaders are all women. It's not an issue that I see in my life. And if through our engagement, we can embrace more of that leadership, that balance between the tāne and the wahine, as it's so necessary, those are the types of leaders I aspire to be.
And seeing those things in Aotearoa, kind of almost part of your journey going somewhere else to see what we already have. That's wonderful. Emma, a question maybe coming in from our audience.
I have one here from Ross. He asks, inequality is a major issue and is getting worse. What ways are there to ensure that all whānau can have access to healthy diets?
Yeah, and I think we really saw this coming through in the first lockdown, when the lack of resilience in our communities, particularly those in lower socioeconomic and more highly deprived communities, were being tested. And I was really heartened to see the community-based approaches that were being taken. And I think more and more we're seeing the establishment of these kind of initiatives such as Karioi. At the time, I was actually running some free advisory services for Māori organizations around the country to see if we could help them in any way to weather the storm of lockdown. And the amount of people who had food resilience pushed to the forefront of what they're doing, making sure that particularly their elders were taken care of, but that their people were fed. One tribe that I spoke to delivered 7,000 food and hygiene packs to their people. And they were on record of saying, we're ready to burn our balance sheet to make sure our people are okay. So no matter if you have a small or a large influence, this ability to put people back at the heart of our decision making really came to the forefront, and it needs to stay there. As soon as we leave crisis mode and as soon as we're able to handle this post-COVID environment as a country, we need to maintain that crisis, because the inequality is a crisis. And if we don't treat it as such, people are going to be falling off the edges.
Yeah, agree. Joey, I think you might have a question.
Yep. So Leanne asked, are we being good ancestors?
Well, I think that's for everyone to answer on their own individual feelings. But I think that we have a way to improve. There are elements that I think our descendants will be proud of. There are elements such as our lackadaisical response to climate change that we will find ourselves in the path of judgment in the future generations. And if we're really being authentic and true of saying being a better ancestor is something that means a lot to me, we need to make that decision to say that if I do something for the benefit of tomorrow, I'm willing to sacrifice things today in order to achieve that. And I think we're still trying to find a balance as a nation for that. Some things we're doing well, other things we've got a long way to come across. But we're still a young country and we're still a young society, and so we'll get that balance eventually.
There's a question here from Ramita Singh, and the question is, are there ideas around how we can incorporate this interesting mahi for our learners or in our learners in schools? So kind of broadly, what are the things that schools can be doing to kind of link in with this kaupapa?
Yeah, I think the key thing is embracing the fact that we are a multicultural nation built on a foundation of treaty partnership, and the ability to embrace the diversity of thought, of values, and of priorities that come with that is something that's really essential for what the post-COVID Aotearoa economy will look like. And that starts with education at the first instance, and the ability for us to learn our history as a country, but also how that history has formed the values of the different groups over which we're trying to make decisions. One thing that I think is becoming more and more prevalent is this idea of social segregation, whether it's implicit or explicit, and that's dividing lines between the haves and the have-nots. As a country, I think we need to wholeheartedly reject that concept that we have people who, by some circumstances, are better off and some who are worse off. We have an equal obligation to everyone. And in doing so, and acknowledging the outcomes for the collective, we can contextualize the outcomes of the individual within that. So my success becomes a part of the collective success.
Yeah, nice. Joey.
Yep. So this question, Principal Pete Jones, what are the opportunities for our rangatahi in the future of food in our community of Manirewa?
I think that there is a large opportunity for us to see that if we embrace returning to the whenua and being able to be the masters and commanders of our own food sovereignty, and that we are, as a nation, depending on whether we're Maori or Pākehā or immigrant, we all have histories in the land and sea. We're a people of the land and sea. And by embracing this idea of community gardens, that we can control our wellness outcomes, our well-being outcomes, and through our hard work, our communities can thrive, that is more learnings in terms of the values that we should embody, both as rangatahi, but also as adults, because then you can take that focus on community into whatever area that you move into. And so it's very clear and tangible that feeding my neighbor helps me because my society is stronger. But then when you apply that to, say, for instance, investment in finance, what does that look like? It goes back to the same conversation around the first fish is for tangaroa. It's like, how do you take what you learn from tilling the soils and sharing the harvest? How do you apply that in everything that you do?
And maybe final question, Emma?
Yep, I've got the final question again from Pete Jones. We have a Mara at school, and he said, "What would Wakatu be interested in supporting the development of our Mara at school, and could the Mara be a partner for Kanapu?"
I can't speak on behalf of Kanapu.
Yeah.
I do know that Isaac is very approachable, and he's a lovely gentleman, and he's just got the gift of the gab. He's an amazing person to listen to, great singing voice. And so I'd absolutely encourage approaching Isaac in that regard. In terms of Wakatu, we're actually very dependent on bringing external experts in. But then once we bring that in, we need to find a way, how do we adapt those external knowledge systems into who we fundamentally are as a people. And so, as I was saying about that extractive to reciprocal relationship, so it is with this, is that we've extracted knowledge from other parts of the country, from Taranaki, from the top of the South, from the wider New Zealand. So we have an obligation to give. And whatever that might look like, I'm happy to help explore if that's something that Pete would like to discuss. And whilst I can't make promises on behalf of my whānau, being based in Gisborne and they're down in Nelson, I'm out of reach to get reprimanded. But that's certainly part of who we are, and I'd love to have that conversation.
Awesome, thank you.
Look, that time has gone just like that, and now kind of wrapping up. There's, as I said, there was so much in that, and I think a couple of things really kind of resonated for me. That gift of diversity, kind of embracing diversity as a gift, as something that kind of underpins our, this amazing country. And then also that link between connection and reciprocity, that connecting is about what we give. not just about what we can receive. And I think sometimes connection, people view that kind of a little bit one way. So I thought that was amazing. And I just love taking away, make mokopuna decisions every day. So much, but just really, really appreciate this very thoughtful and challenging. You know, there are challenges for us to take away from that. So, kia ora, thank you. Joey,
ora.
if you would like to finish with a closing karakia, please.
Okay, cool. Unihea, unihea, unihea ki te unihea, unihea, unihea ki te tapu, ki te ui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wara I te ara takata, koi ara, I ronga whakairia aka ki ronga, kia tina, tina, huie taikea.